Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another Top Cut breakdown. Today we have 3 tournaments to talk about that happened over the weekend. We have PPG Arizona, TAC Online, and Card Market Online. So we're gonna go over that in today's video, guys. Make sure if you are new here to subscribe so you can stay up to date with the meta. And if you want to help the channel out, there are a lot of ways down in the description to do so. Patreon, TCG Player, all those different things do help out a lot, guys. I really do appreciate it if you just maybe go down there, take a gander, see how you can help out. But with that being said, we will get right into this video. So we're just gonna break down the top 8 of PPG, top 8 of TAC, and then the top 4 of the EU event. They are as follows. PPG was an IRL event. I know those are kind of hard to come by nowadays. I want to say they capped out at around 50 or so players. There was 2 Soul Striker, 1 Blue Baby, 1 Green Gotenks, 1 Red Broly, 1 Vegex, 1 Jiren, and 1 Bulma. Some pretty cool stuff there. Soul Striker ended up taking that event. Top 8 of TAC was an online tournament, about 128 or so players. 2 Vegex, 1 Soul Striker, 1 Sin Shenron, 1 Majin Vegeta, 1 Android 13, believe it or not, 1 Green Gotenks, and 1 Dark Broly. Soul Striker also took this event. And then the top 4 of the EU event, we have first place Vegex, second place Blue Baby, third place Invoker, and fourth place Golden Frieza. This was another online tournament, about 60 players. So a lot of results here to talk about. The metas are pretty diverse from tournament to tournament. We do have a lot of, repeat offenders. Soul Striker, Vegex, Blue Baby, actually, believe it or not. Blue Baby coming off of a few weeks of not really doing too much. Again, I think that's kind of a result of the Revenge Big Bang Attack promo. But anyways, let's just start breaking it down deck by deck. So firstly, we're talking about Soul Striker, and once again, coming off a very strong week last week, and it continued to dominate this weekend. Not so many slots in these top cuts. They didn't have as much representation, but still winning 2 out of 3 tournaments. Very powerful. I've said it many times that if you want to play a blue deck this format, and not so much Blue Baby because it kind of has its own archetype, but if you want to play a mono blue good card deck, you're probably looking at the different leaders of SS3 reboot, Soul Striker reboot, SS4 Vegeta, Zamasu, and Vegito. Those are probably your top contenders for mono blue decks. I think it does really pay off to pick the mono blue deck that suits your playstyle best. Zamasu being more aggressive, Soul Striker being more mid-rangey, SS3 reboot being more control-like. But the thing here is Soul Striker is actually starting to assert some form of dominance, which kind of goes against what I'm saying in that regard. I didn't really think there was a quote-unquote best mono blue deck in this format, but if we're looking at the results, I mean, it tends to point towards Soul Striker. Soul Striker won a few tournaments last weekend. It's won again this weekend at 2 different tournaments, and it's just been seeing a lot of play, a lot of representation. That could just be a popularity thing. I've been on Soul Striker, Marcus has been on Soul Striker on his streams. A lot of the content creators are having a lot of fun playing Soul Striker, even Eggman messing around with like AOD Soul Striker. It could be a popularity thing, or it could be a power thing, and I don't really know how to parse that myself. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Do you think Soul Striker is the best blue deck right now, or do you think it's more of like a popularity, kind of the deck picking up steam kind of thing amongst a lot of players? I'm actually really curious to know what you guys think. Again, I'm not quite sure where I stand, but I will tell you that Soul Striker is a very, very powerful deck. It's actually one of the only decks in this format that doesn't solely rely on a specific chain or an engine, and that's what we're talking about with the kind of good blue card deck. These things, they're very open with options. They're not linear like Red Broly, like Red Gogeta, like Majin Vegeta. They don't play these chains in these blue decks, and it gives you a lot of options. And I think that's actually one of the main reasons why a deck like Soul Striker is doing so well in the format. Your options are very abundant. Blue has a lot of great support, as were some other colors. Maybe like red, they have to kind of lean into those chains because their generic red stuff isn't quite as good as the generic blue stuff. And it's actually really interesting. I'm looking through the list right now, and again, most of these decks do rely on chains, Soul Striker being one of the few exceptions. So maybe that openness and options is what's leading Soul Striker to do so well, but I suppose time will tell. But again, this looks like another week heavily dominated by blue. So we'll just go on. 1 Blue Baby, 1 being at PPG, and 1 being the second place deck at the EU event. Blue Baby, once again, I do think it's a deck that's kind of restricted by its promo. I'm sure more people would play it if that promo wasn't so hard to get. Same thing with Red Broly, which is another deck that topped here this weekend. But regardless of that, I think Blue Baby is a very strong deck. I mean, when you basically have a Frieza Prison that can actually play super combos, has a little bit more cheaper diversity in terms of counterplay, and actually counterplays that hit a wider range of things, I think Blue Baby is poised to do very, very well. I do actually think it'd do a lot better if that promo wasn't so hard to get. You'd probably see more slots of it in Top Cut, because against certain decks, Blue Baby is just so hard to beat. Like, you have the tools to beat aggro with like Gohan Baby's minion and Vegeta Ready to Rumble. You have the tools to beat other control decks with your counter and things of that nature. And then a lot of times, if mid-range can't pivot to aggro, they'll have a hard time against you as well. So Blue Baby, I think, is very, very good. Maybe it's like a good thing that the promo was hard to get, just so we don't see it like absolutely ruin the format. But I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. Next up, we have Green Gotenks, which took spots at PPG and TAC. So, Green Gotenks week 1, the most dominant deck by far. This is pretty much par for the course. Over the past few weeks, Gotenks has been declining a bit in popularity as well as top cut representation, and it's kind of just finding a comfortable spot in the meta. And as I was talking about Soul Striker and how many options it has, Gotenks is kind of like the polar opposite. Like, the deck really only does one thing offensively, and that's pretty much spam Grim Reaper and then hope to get Cell Xeno in the late game. Your defensive options are very, very good. Of course, you have Dorm Potential Unleashed, you have different things like Shocking Death Ball, and you have like Cocoonsa, for instance. But the offensive options are very, very limited, and it still does a powerful thing. I can't say that, spamming Grim Reaper isn't powerful. A 2-drop 25k double striker that draws 2 cards, pops a guy, and then when it itself dies, you get those fusion materials back. The deck is just plus central, especially when you have the Unison in play. You're just drawing probably an unfair amount of cards, and I'm still pretty convinced that Grim Reaper should have a unique tag on it. But still, I mean, just the fact that it just does one thing over and over again, you give people time and they find the ways to counter it. I talked about it a little bit last week, where the way I'm kind of playing around it right now is just removing Grim Reaper after Grim Reaper, not even caring that my opponent's getting back their fusion materials. Yes, they're getting back 5k combo for free essentially, but if you can just remove Grim Reaper after Grim Reaper and limit their ability to go into Cell Xeno, it's going to be very, very hard for them to end the game. And I think just things like that, where the monotonous of the deck, it just really just allows players to figure out how to beat it. So no surprise that Green Gotenks is kind of settling down right now. One Red Broly, much like Blue Baby, I think it's a victim of its promo. It's very hard to play this deck, especially at a cost efficient side of things, but it's still very, very powerful. I mean, what's really interesting about Red Broly is that the chain doesn't really have protection. None of them really have deflect, and none of them really have barrier. So it just speaks to how strong the deck is, that even though there is no protection, it's so fast. There are a lot of instances where you can turn 2 kill in this deck, but a lot of other mid-range and control decks will take you a bit longer to kill. But especially in an aggro mirror, like, you have very, very strong game ending potential very, very early, and without having much protection, I mean, the only real thing you have for quote-unquote protection is your leader's ability to discard a card and then replay a Broly when your chain is destroyed, but that even costs you from hand. So to have this deck, in my opinion, they really tried to balance it very well, but it's still so strong. It's more so in line with Blue Baby, where I think that if Astonishing Potential Broly wasn't so hard to get, we'd probably see more of this in Top Cut. So we're actually in a very interesting meta at this point, in the sense that there are many decks that are limited by their promos. Maybe not too many, but the majority of them being Blue Baby and Red Broly, and then a few other here and there. Even like Majin Vegeta is like that, to an example, where you have that 1-drop double striking Majin Vegeta that's hard to get. So with those being the case, maybe that is acting as like a balancing point in the meta. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or not. I wish the promos weren't so hard to get, but I mean, it is what it is in the state of COVID and everything. So moving along, we have Vegex. Vegex actually ended up winning the EU event and taking the most spots out of this combined top 20, I guess it would be, because top 8, and top 4, I guess that would be a top 20. So yeah, out of the top 20, Vegex took the most spots, 4 of those spots, followed by Soul Striker, which took 3 of the spots. So, Vegex winning another tournament, it's so strange to me, because I don't see Vegex as unfair anymore. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if you maybe think differently, but without full power ability, Vegex just doesn't seem like the powerhouse it once was. And I'll still, live and die by this comment. I think the Vegex leader is still problematic, in the sense that future drop area support cards can definitely be very, very broken in Vegex. But as it stands right now, I don't see Vegex being too much of a problem, because it's spamming a few cards here and there, but that's not really something we're unused to seeing, right? Like spamming the 19k Vegeta, that's really the only aggressive spam you get offensively, and the Unison, I suppose. But the age of like 15k Rush isn't as great as it once was. We're seeing cards like Senzu Bean, we're seeing cards like Unending Awakening, all these basically 5k buff cards seeing a lot of play. But I guess, the Vegex fusion engine itself is still quite good. Getting a card back from your warp, usually a super combo, and then free evolving into another 30k double striker that removes a guy, definitely solid. But I don't know, maybe it is just the free value that Vegex generates. I will again definitely say in the future it could be problematic, but right now I don't see it as unfair. But again, let me know in the comments below what you think about that. We'll keep going with the rest of the Top Cut though. So Jiren, I'm having this on the channel tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Super cool that, this kind of speaks to what I've been thinking about with this format, even since like set 10. I think there are so many playable decks out there that just aren't seeing play. Like off the top of my head, and in this meta, we have Jiren, Android 13, which I never would have thought would have been one of those playable decks. And then in my head, there's things like Toa, Skillless, like Black Skillless, for instance, I can see a lot of play here. So I like that these decks are topping. It speaks to what I've been thinking, where there are just a lot of really good decks in the meta. And then the one Bulma, you know, whether it's a Gogeta chain, whether it's just blocker spam, Bulma has actually been doing consistently well. It's actually kind of funny. Bulma is kind of showing itself to be the best generic mono red leader at the moment, which I think a lot of players would have contested that point, maybe to like reboot hit or maybe like Yamcha mono red. But I think with draft box 6 we'll actually see a bit of an evolution with mono red, because mono red actually gets a lot of really good battle cards in draft box 6, namely I forget his name, so I shouldn't say namely, but the King Piccolo that has barrier, deflect, double strike, and you know, burns your opponent if they negate the attack. That's definitely a great card, more and so in line with a lot of the deflect and barrier cards that the other colors have that red just doesn't have at the moment. So moving along, we have one Sin Shenron. Shout out to Andy, my teammate, topping with Sin Shenron. It's a powerhouse of a deck. I mean, it's probably the best control deck in this meta. I would say it's right up there with Blue Baby and Invoker, but I think in this meta, and even since set 10, Sin Shenron has put up the most results. That could be wrong though. I think Invoker may actually have Sin beat, maybe if you compare set 10 and set 11. But I think in set 11, Sin is looking like it's been doing the best recently. But still, it's a powerhouse of a deck. Tap 6, you almost win the game if your opponent doesn't have an answer to that. So really good there. One Majin Vegeta, super aggressive, super fast. This format is so cool in the sense that we have this slew of super aggressive decks, super slow decks, and then a lot of good mid-range decks. I think it's been amazing over the past year and a half, the diversity we've had in the meta here, and this is another set of tournaments that pretty much shows that. But regardless, Majin Vegeta, again, very, very fast. That new Majin Buu that's coming out in the expansion sets 14 and 15 is going to give this deck a very, very nice consistency boost, because you're kind of hoping to draw all your pieces by like turn 2, turn 3, and having that Vegeta, or that Majin Buu rather, to search those things out should help quite a bit. And then Android 13, wow, if you had to just tell me, Joey, guess the most obscure leader that is going to top tack online here, Android 13 would not even have been in my mind. This is really cool. It was pretty much a mono green hand control deck. I know back, I think it was maybe set 9 or maybe somewhere around then, when people were experimenting with Android 13 and it was able to rip your opponent's hand to 0, I think on like turn 2, but you had to draw very, very specific cards, because this leader doesn't offer you draw power on the unawakened side, but there is a Android 14 that basically gets you awakened turn 1. So if you're able to do that consistently, I think you're actually going to be in for a pretty good time. And again, just speaks to my point of, I think there are a lot of decks in this format that are very, very playable, as long as you put a lot of time into them and really figure them out. I think they're actually really good. One Dark Broly, love to see it. It's a deck that I think rewards pilots. I think if you put a lot of time into Dark Broly, I think it actually rewards you very, very well, and I think that's actually one of the reasons why we won't see a ton of it in these top cuts. You do have to put a lot of time into it, maybe unlike some of the other decks that rely on chains. Like, I would argue that playing Dark Broly is probably a little bit more difficult than playing a deck like Green Gotenks. Once again, you do one thing offensively, you have a very, very clear line of defense with Dormant followed up by a follow-up negate. Dark Broly is a lot more, or a lot less linear, I should say. So I do like to see their decks there that reward pilots for sure. And then just for the rest of it, we have Invoker and Golden Frieza. These two decks were only seen at the top 4 of EU. The top 4 of EU was actually really, really interesting. I mean, just not seeing Invoker for a while in this format has been a bit of a shock, because it's got a very powerful set of win conditions that not a lot of decks can interact with, but maybe some of the more aggressive decks are kind of just pushing it out. And then we'll wrap this video up talking about Golden Frieza. Man, set 1 leader, still living on. The cool thing about Golden Frieza is he has plenty of energy manipulation, he has plenty of draw power, and as long as we continue to get like powerful Frieza army cards, this leader can probably be relevant for the rest of the game's existence. Like, your awakening turn, if you can sacrifice 2 Frieza army guys, you're going to untap a ton of energy, you're going to draw a ton of cards. It's kind of insane that way. So that's wrapping up the meta for today, guys. It's so diverse, it's so cool. I know a lot of people like triangle formats, some people even like tier 0 formats, but I think this level of diversity really does test players and make the true skill come out when you can play in such a diverse field and do very, very well. You know, side decking to the best of your ability. You know, most of these are best of 1 events, but PPG was best of 3. So basically tailoring your deck and side decking to match the meta as best you can. Maybe not have like super specific cards for super specific matchups unless it's like a really bad matchup. I think it really does point out some player skill. So I'm gonna end the video with this, guys. Just a quick note from PPG. The Pro Play Tour Season 3 premium qualifiers will be hosted at various LGSs with big travel voucher pricing. Get your LGSs involved in the mini qualifiers by visiting the PPG event management website. I'm going to have the link for that down in the description below. Just wanted to throw that out there because I think it's pretty cool that your LGS could possibly host one of these events. The more of these IRL events I think we can do, the better. The online events are absolutely amazing. I love the fact that people are running them to keep the game going, but I do definitely want to get back to a IRL state of events as well. So if your local is interested in this, definitely go click that link down in the description. But guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.